Tell you a halachic story concerning a woman who's given the name Rivka for the story. Rivka, a senior citizen, lives alone. Any family that she has is far away from her. And I would say, unfortunately, she doesn't really have a social group. And she understands that she's missing out on some interaction. And for whatever the reason, she hasn't really pursued trying to connect with a peer group. But she has connected with neighborhood cats, CATS. She puts food out in front of her apartment every morning, every evening, solid food, water. She talks to them, and she even strolls the street with the cats following her, or at least hanging out. Circumstances arose and she decided she actually wanted to get a different apartment. And she found something very close to where she currently was living, a basement apartment with a little yard, and with the owners of the property living in the house above with several children. And they discussed the terms and agreed on a year's lease. A contract was signed, checks were delivered, and our friend Rivka moves in. The next morning, the husband in the family, comes out to go to shul, and he sees all of a sudden there are like 12 to 15 cats on his property. And he can't believe this is like never happened before. He goes to shul, comes back, the cats are still there. And after a while, something makes him put 2 or 1 plus 1 together. And he asks his new tenants if she knows anything about these cats. She says, "They're my friends. I take care of them." He says, you can't have these cats here. They're all over the property. I have kids here in the house. Who knows? They're carrying any germs. And she says, but we have a signed contract. He says, but we didn't talk about you having all these pets. He says, but we have a signed contract. So he went to ask the Shaila. So before I tell you what Rav Silberstein answered, I want to share with you the first Mishnah in Bava Basra. Bava Basra has a lot of halachas about property rights, about obligations of neighbors and to neighbors. So the very first Mishnah in Bava Basra talks about people who have common ground between their homes. In the Mishnah's time, it was very, very popular, I guess in some measure, but on a smaller scale, a much smaller scale, like the associations in Century Village, that people's doors faced into a common area. And there are 2 particularly noted statuses that an area could have. If it was large enough that everybody had the minimum 4x4 amos in addition to a wide walkway in front of their own house entrance, then any one neighbor could force others to put up fences. But if the available property was less, no one could force, but you can agree. You can agree to put up a fence between the common property, to divide the common property in a fair proportion and to put up a fence that would be shared. The Mishnah happens to talk about a case where only two people are sharing the property, but the principle would work with whatever number it is. And they agree that they want to put up a fence. One of the requirements of the fence is that it also has to be dialed out. It's supposed to block vision because people are entitled to their visual privacy. And then the question is, well, of what materials will we use to build the fence? You know, they'll each have to give an equal amount of land from their own property to build the fence, and they will have to agree on the materials if there's an option. Now, the Mishnah lists some potential options. It could be either chiseled stone or non-chiseled stone. It could be bricks, half bricks, full bricks. But basically, the Mishnah makes the statement, Hakol kiminhag hamedina. While we list potential materials that the fence could be made out of, we go according to what the custom is in the neighborhood. So if everybody is using chiseled stone for fences, then we use chiseled stone for fences. If everybody's using bricks for their fences, then we use bricks for our fences. I guess we can relate to that. We know in our associations, we have a lot of rules, and we look for uniformity in many cases. So we see there's already some historical precedent for that. Very specifically, Rabbi Silberstein quoted a halacha in the Shulchan Aruch, also based upon these general halachas that I referred to, which says, as follows in the Shulchan Aruch, in Kosher Mishpat, it says that if one of the neighbors who are sharing this common space, you know, they haven't divided their space, they're leaving their space as open common space. So if all of a sudden, one of the neighbors decides that he wants to keep a cow in the space, even though it's in front of his own house, or he wants to set up a mill, or he wants to get a bunch of chickens. You know, our daughter who lives in Australia, just outside the city of Sydney, she moved to a family retreat that's an hour away from Sydney to escape the potential coronavirus impact. And even though, thank God, she has access to delivery of food, just in case something would happen, she bought 2 sheep because it's a farming neighborhood. So she bought 2 sheep, so if she would need sources of milk, she would have milk, and she got chickens, and they've been already laying eggs every day. The chickens have been laying eggs. So one neighbor here decides to bring chickens in, but nobody else has chickens and nobody wanted chickens. So the Shulchan Aruch says, Chavero ma'akev alav. Any one of the neighbors can object and can veto this. This is what not what our association is about. Anything that's not normal to the particular localized neighborhood sharing this property, then anybody could object that we don't do this here. So that's the general rule. The general rule is customary. Whatever is customary, you know, if it's not written, it doesn't matter. But if it's accepted as customary, then it's good. And if it's not customary, people can object, and then you would have to comply. So that was the psak. And of course, the owner of the house, you know, was told that he's right, that even though there was a signed contract, and even though money exchanged hands, obviously refunds would have to be in order, appropriate refunds, prorated, but that there was no reason that he should have expected that his new tenant would have all these cats hanging out on his property. So he should be polite to her. He should, if he can, help her find a new place, give her an appropriate amount of time. But he has a right to give her the choice of it's either the cats or here. So you could either get rid of your cats, figure out how to do that, or you'd have to transfer to a property that might be more suitable for you to have the cats, but not here on my property with my family. So that's the halacha, a little bit about the neighborly obligations, and maybe a time to remind ourselves that there are people who could use a little bit more social contact. And whenever we can help out, certainly is a big mitzvah chesed to extend that.